I never imagined that the biggest lie in my marriage wouldn't be an affair, a gambling addiction, or a secret family hidden across the country. It was something so unexpected that, when I found it by accident, I actually laughed at first because my mind refused to believe it. 20 years of marriage, and I realized I had never truly known the man I promised to spend my life with. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. My husband had gone to visit a friend while I stayed home to clean out the storage room. We had talked for years about organizing it, but life always got in the way. There were old Christmas decorations, broken lamps, dusty photo albums, and boxes neither of us had opened since moving into our house almost 15 years earlier. I found a small metal lockbox tucked behind a stack of paint cans. I almost ignored it. I assumed it held old tax papers or insurance documents. I knew where my husband usually kept important paperwork, so seeing this hidden away seemed odd. Even stranger, the key was taped underneath the box. I smiled. I guess somebody didn't want to lose the key. I unlocked it without thinking. Inside were several envelopes, a faded photograph, a hospital bracelet, and a stack of handwritten letters tied together with a blue ribbon. None of them had my name on them. The hospital bracelet carried a tiny baby's name. The same last name as my husband's. My stomach tightened. At first I thought maybe it belonged to a relative. Then I unfolded the first letter. The handwriting wasn't mine. It began with only 5 words. I promised I'd never tell. My hand started shaking. I had always believed my marriage was built on honesty. We weren't perfect. We argued about money sometimes. We disagreed over vacations, retirement plans, and whether the kitchen really needed remodeling. Normal married things. But secrets? That was never supposed to be us. I sat on the floor surrounded by dusty boxes and kept reading. The letters weren't romantic. They weren't love letters. They were updates. Someone had written every few months for years. There were mentions of birthdays, school plays, doctor appointments, little league games, report cards. The same child appeared in every letter. By the time I reached the newest one, the child wasn't a child anymore. The last letter ended with, "I think it's time the truth comes out. Keeping this from everyone isn't fair anymore." It was dated 6 months earlier. I couldn't breathe. When my husband came home that evening, I left the lockbox sitting on the kitchen table. He walked in smiling. "I'm starving." Then he saw the box. Every bit of color disappeared from his face. He didn't even ask where I found it. He simply whispered, "You opened it." I nodded. For nearly a minute, neither of us spoke. Finally I asked the question that had been burning inside me all afternoon. "Who is that child?" He closed his eyes. I'd been terrified of this day for 20 years. I expected excuses. I expected lies. Instead, tears filled his eyes. "I need you to hear everything before you decide what to do." I folded my arms. "You've had 20 years. Start talking." He sat down across from me. Long before we met, he had been engaged. Not married. Engaged. They were young. They planned a future together. A few months before the wedding, she discovered she was pregnant. Everything should have been joyful. Instead, doctors found serious complications. During labor, she died. The baby survived. I stared at him. He continued quietly. Her parents blamed him. They believed their daughter would still be alive if she hadn't become pregnant. Grief consumed everyone. Lawyers became involved. Because he was barely 22, struggling financially, and emotionally broken, her wealthy parents fought for custody. After months in court, he gave up. Not because he didn't love the baby. Because every lawyer told him he couldn't win. The grandparents adopted the child. On one condition. He could never reveal that he was the biological father. He could receive updates through letters. Nothing more. No visits. No phone calls. No birthdays. Nothing. I wanted to interrupt. To scream. Instead I whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked directly at me. Because by the time we met, I had already signed everything. I thought it was over. I thought bringing it into our marriage would only hurt you. Hurt me? I was ashamed. I stood up. You let me believe we couldn't have children together because life just worked out that way. He nodded slowly. I know. You watched me cry after every failed fertility treatment. His eyes filled again. I know. You held me while I blamed myself. I know. My voice cracked. And all that time, you already had a child. Silence answered me. That night neither of us slept. I stayed in the guest room. Every memory from 20 years replayed differently. Every anniversary. Every conversation about children. Every Mother's Day when he quietly bought flowers because he knew I struggled. Had he been thinking about someone else every single time? The next morning he knocked softly. I deserve your anger. I didn't answer. I just want one thing. Still silence. I want you to meet my child. I opened the door. What? I've never met my own child. The sentence stopped me cold. He explained that the letters had always come through an attorney. He had respected the agreement. Until recently. The grandparents had both passed away within the previous year. The child, now an adult, had discovered the truth while settling the estate. The latest letter hadn't been from the attorney. It had been written by the child. I think it's time the truth comes out. They wanted to meet him. But fear had kept him frozen. He hadn't known how to tell me. Or whether I would leave. Part of me wanted to. Another part saw something I hadn't noticed before. This wasn't the face of a man protecting another family. It was the face of someone carrying unbearable guilt. A week later we drove 3 hours together. Neither of us spoke much. I kept wondering what kind of person waits 20 years to meet a parent. Would there be anger? Resentment? Bitterness? When we arrived at a quiet coffee shop, I spotted someone sitting near the window. Young. Maybe 23. Holding the same faded photograph I'd found in the lockbox. My husband froze. I don't think I can do this. I squeezed his hand before I realized I was doing it. You've already lost 20 years. We walked inside. The young adult stood. Our eyes met first. Then they looked at my husband. Neither of them spoke. Finally they both laughed nervously at exactly the same moment. It broke the tension. Then they hugged. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. Just two strangers trying to hold on to something that had never existed. I quietly stepped back. For almost 2 hours they talked. About favorite foods. College. Jobs. Childhood memories. Questions that had waited decades. Eventually I was invited into the conversation. I've heard about you. I blinked. You have? There were always updates about your marriage. I looked at my husband. He nodded. I asked the attorney how you both were. I stared at him. You never stopped checking? Never. My heart softened just a little. Over the next several months, meetings became regular. Slowly, awkwardness disappeared. I learned about birthdays I had missed. Favorite books. Dreams. Regrets. One afternoon, while we were cooking dinner together, I finally asked the question I'd carried since opening that lockbox. Were you ever angry? The answer surprised me. I used to be. A pause. But then I realized something. What? I grew up surrounded by people who loved me. My grandparents made mistakes, but they never let me doubt I mattered. Another pause. I don't think my father abandoned me. Those words made my husband quietly cry over a cutting board full of onions. None of us pretended the tears were because of the onions. Months passed. Then one evening another surprise arrived. A small envelope. Inside was a family tree project. At the top was one simple word. Family. There were 3 branches. One for grandparents. One for parents. And beside my husband's name. Mine. Not stepmother. Not my first name alone. Just Mom. I couldn't stop crying. I didn't want to assume, came the quiet voice from across the table. But, you've treated me like family from the first day. I hugged as tightly as I could. For years I believed the greatest tragedy of my life was never becoming a mother. I had no idea life would answer that prayer in such an unexpected way. One evening, after dinner, my husband and I sat on the back porch watching the sunset. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I looked at him for a long time. You should have trusted me. I know. You stole 20 years of truth. I know. But I also know you weren't protecting another life. He nodded. You were protecting your shame. He buried his face in his hands. I thought if I buried it deeply enough, nobody would ever get hurt again. I reached over and held his hand. The strange thing about secrets is they don't stay buried. He looked at me. They grow. He whispered, I'm sorry. I know. Those 2 words carried 20 years of pain. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. Trust didn't magically return. Some days I still wondered what life might have looked like if I'd known from the beginning. Maybe we would have reached out sooner. Maybe birthdays wouldn't have been missed. Maybe family vacations would have included one more seat at the table. Those thoughts still visit me from time to time. But they no longer control me. Instead, I think about what happened after the truth came out. Our home became louder. Holiday dinners became bigger. Laughter replaced silence. The empty chair at Thanksgiving disappeared forever. A year later, we celebrated another birthday together. While everyone talked around the table, I quietly watched my husband smile in a way I'd never seen before. Not because he had finally been forgiven. Because he had finally stopped hiding. That was the real secret inside the lockbox. It wasn't the letters. It wasn't the photograph. It wasn't even the existence of a child. It was the weight of one terrible decision carried alone for 2 decades. Finding that box almost destroyed my marriage. Telling the truth saved what was left of it. If I've learned anything from all of this, it's that love can survive painful truths much more often than it can survive hidden ones. Secrets don't protect the people we love. They only delay the pain until it becomes even harder to face. The truth may break a heart for a while, but honesty gives it a chance to heal. If my story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your story too.